like to introduce you all to a gardening friend of mine. This is Darrell Merrell, the Tomato Man, and he's become famous in northeast Oklahoma for growing heirloom tomato plants for other gardeners to put in their gardens. And Darrell, how did you get started with growing heirloom tomatoes, and what are they specifically?
Okay. Well, I got started just looking for a good tasting tomato as a backyard gardener, and first year I grew them was in 1991, and I had trouble finding the seed. Of course, nobody sold the plants at all, so I had to hunt around for seed. And I grew them the 3 varieties that first year and fell in love with them, and took off from there. I found the Seed Savers Exchange, and I've gotten seed now from gardeners all across the country. An heirloom tomato is an open pollinated variety and generally considered to be more than 50 years old. Heirloom simply means something valuable handed down from one generation to another. So it's seed that families have kept in their family for generation after generation and grown out. And they've stood the test of time, and some of them are still around.
Okay, and you're keeping those lines going here for Oklahoma gardeners, which is great. Now, there's one variety we were looking at before taping that I love the name of. It's called Radiator Charlie's Mortgage Lifter. Say that 10 times. And Darrell, how'd that name come to be? That's just bizarre.
Okay. Well, we owe the saving of Radiator Charlie to Jeff McCormick of Southern Exposure Seed Exchange Company. Radiator Charlie is named M.C. Biles. He lived in Logan, West Virginia back in the 1930s and had a radiator shop. He's an avid gardener, and he got into crossbreeding tomatoes, and over a 6-year period of time he stabilized a tomato which he called the Radiator Charlie. It's a large pink round beefsteak type tomato, very few seeds, very flavorful. He started selling them in 1940 for $1 each in the 1940s.
That's a lot of money.
Raised $6,000 over a 6-year period and paid the mortgage off on his home, hence the second part of the name, Mortgage Lifter.
That's
Radiator
correct.
Charlie's Mortgage Lifter.
That's a great name. Well, now, how many varieties are you growing here of heirloom tomatoes?
I have 150 plants here behind us, 51 varieties this year. Last year I grew 69, over 500 plants, and in the last 6 years I've grown close to 300 varieties of these old-time heirloom tomatoes.
You're kind of fine-tuning the ones that do well in Oklahoma, right?
Right. I save the seed and replant them year after year so that they're becoming adjusted to our climate. And a lot of times it takes 3 years before a tomato will adjust. The first year you plant it out, it just doesn't do well. And but you still save the seed and try next year. And about the 3rd year they start living up to form.
That's great, and that's the value of something that is open pollinated, that you can do that with it. Behind us here is something that it's not directly related to the heirloom crop, but I want you all to notice the little tent that Darrell's put up here. Tell us about this, Darrell.
Well, this is I just made a little arbor out of T-post and range wire, or some people call it hog wire, and I was going to raise some morning glories and binding flowers and cucumbers and beans, pole beans. But I got them planted a little late, and I noticed that the sun was heating the wires too hot, and they were burning the plants. So I had to start all over by replanting and covering the wire with a little tent cover so that it'll stay cooler.
Good. Well, you know, we talk a lot about the heat and getting started with a fall garden, and this is something that you might try, is make sure you put some hay around the plants and then shade them as well, and that will cool them down enough for you to have some good success. Well, Darrell, I want to see that okra you're growing. He not only does he grow heirloom tomatoes, but he's also got okra and peppers. Let's take a look at that.
Okay.
Well, Darrell, as we head over towards the okra, I notice you've got some great seedlings here, getting gardeners ready for fall planting, I guess, huh?
These are my heirloom tomato varieties, planted and timed especially for planting this time of the year.
Well,
for production in September and October.
Yeah, that's one of the best times of year for tomatoes. So if your tomatoes died from disease or something, there's still plenty of time to plant tomatoes in your backyard. Well, tell me about this okra. This is a kind of a shorter than normal plant.
Well, this is a very rare okra. The seed was given to me by Stacy Guthrie of Big Cabin, Oklahoma, who is now deceased. Had a hard time getting it going, but I've got enough seeds this year to have about 14 plants. It's a very short, stubby okra. He found it in New Orleans at a cafe there. The owner said that her grandparents had brought it over from Italy.
Wow.
And he said it makes the best frying okra that he has ever eaten.
Yeah, that's a beautiful pod on there. That's a really nice one. I noticed these are fairly short and look at this. This already has a pod on it as well. Of course, about how long is that going to get, Darrell?
That'll get about 6 inches.
About 6 inches, and it stays tender?
And it stays tender, and it is, you can't wrap your fingers around it, it gets so thick.
Wow. Boy, you're making my mouth water. Well, over here, one last thing I wanted to look at is we talked about with the tomatoes, you got those all in one block and you save seed, but I noticed you've got eggplant and peppers here. Is this like an isolation block?
This is an isolation area for the Listada de Gandia and the Jimmy Nardello sweet frying peppers. They need to be isolated a significant distance from other peppers or eggplants so that you don't get cross-pollination, so you have pure seeds to replant.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I hope y'all have gotten some appreciation of the value of gardeners like Darrell who are maintaining lines of heirloom varieties. And Darrell, appreciate you visiting with us today. And keep in mind again, it's not too late to do some fall planting, and certainly plan for next year to try some heirloom varieties because they really are delicious. Thanks, Darrell.
Well, it's been my honor, Sue, to be on Oklahoma Gardening.
Great.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.